Hey, it's Dougie Wood, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly what version of SharePoint you're currently using. I'm going to do this by showing you examples of all the SharePoint versions which currently exist so that you know which one it is that you're currently using. This is really useful for if you're, say, onboarding a new IT support company and they need to know what type of SharePoint you're using. It's also useful if you're trying to fix something and you're trying to Google, because different versions of SharePoint will obviously work slightly differently, so you need to know which one it is that you're using. So let's start off by taking a look at the first type of SharePoint. Now this is SharePoint 2003. Now there is some versions of SharePoint which kind of predate this a little bit, but SharePoint 2003 is the earliest version I've ever worked with, and if you still have this, then something's probably gone very wrong, because this is 20 years now out of date. You can tell that SharePoint 2003, because it's got this very, very kind of 90s kind of look, so it's only just going into the millennia, but it's still got that kind of 90s web page look, very basic, no imagery, a lot of text, a lot of bullet points, grey, dark kind of colours. The next is SharePoint 2007. Now this is where they start to add a little bit more structure. There is that famous kind of blue color that's being used. You've got the first sight of the site navigation on the left hand side. You can see the groups and the security there on the left hand side. You've got that navigation bar that's starting to appear from the top, and you've got the site actions which is on the right hand side. Now this is the rough look and feel of a SharePoint 2007 site. I should mention that from about SharePoint 2007 onwards, there's a chance that people might start editing the master pages and the look and feel. So the colors might be slightly different, but the look and feel and the usability will be very similar. Again, 2007 is very outdated. You should not be on this platform, but there may still be instances of that. Moving on to SharePoint 2010, again, outdated, shouldn't be using it, but there might still be instances of this floating around. This is characterized again by the kind of site actions now moving to the left hand side. It's got that kind of grey and dark navy blue if you're using kind of out of the box, and you're starting to see things like image web parts and things like that appear on the pages, and this is what a sort of out of the box SharePoint 2010 site would look like, and even have that famous kind of image there of the three people staring at a laptop on the right hand side. The next option, the next version of SharePoint jumps then to SharePoint 2013. This image is very blurry, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of what the kind of the look and feel of this looks like. I'll talk a bit about SharePoint Online later, but if you're using SharePoint Online, there's a chance that you might be using a classic version of SharePoint, which looks very much like SharePoint 2013. It has those same kind of boxed approach and things like that. Again, this classic version of SharePoint is now depreciated. You shouldn't be using that in SharePoint Online. You can tell if you're in SharePoint Online though, because there should be like a kind of app launcher across the top left hand corner. You might see the URL will kind of say your company name .sharepoint.com. These are all signals that it's actually SharePoint Online rather than SharePoint 2013, which of course is on-premise server version of SharePoint. The next version of SharePoint that we've got is SharePoint 2016, which looks almost identical to SharePoint 2013. Not a huge amount changed, but there are some new web parts, some new functionality that have been added to this. So it's worth going and sort of checking out what web parts are available to be able to distinguish between 2013 and 2016. Also, you might see in the URL, but not always, that there might be a reference to 16 rather than 13. Then we go to SharePoint 2019. Again, this is still on-premise server versions of SharePoint. However, you're starting to get the kind of the more modern look and feel coming through to SharePoint. Adding web parts now has this much quicker, easier kind of sections to the page with these web part plus buttons that you're adding web parts, and we're getting these modern web parts added onto the page. Now, this is probably the point where it's going to get even more difficult to distinguish this from SharePoint Online. But again, use the same kind of logic of, can you access this by going to office.com and then looking in SharePoint? Or is this something that you have to access via your on-premise IT infrastructure. Then the final option is we then have the wonderful SharePoint Online. Now this, no secret, is my favorite version of SharePoint, and it's predominantly the version of SharePoint, but I'll say predominantly the 99% of version of SharePoint that I've been using now for the past 5 years. This is what comes with Microsoft 365, formerly known as Office 365. It's a lot more modern, it's a lot cleaner, it's got a lot more functionality in web parts and things like that. And this is what a potential hub site might look like. There are obviously other different versions, but you can kind of tell the look and the feel. Typically, the newer the version of SharePoint, the better the look and feel is going to be as you move along. So this looks a lot more modern, obviously, than the previous ones. But again, if you're struggling, I mean, I've just pulled up these images by doing a Google search. So if you're really struggling to determine the version of SharePoint you're using, then use a Google search to find some images which relate to it. What can get difficult is when you've got customized packages on top of SharePoint. Now, it usually, from my experience, and you can customize SharePoint Online, but usually customizations, heavy customizations, are more applied to older versions of SharePoint, say 2013, 2016 and things like that, to make them look better. You tend to find now with SharePoint Online that the templates, the site templates, are so good the look and feel that you don't necessarily need to apply a lot of heavy customization to it. So there we go. They're the different versions of SharePoint. Hopefully that's helped you spot and identify what version of SharePoint you're currently using. I wanted to ask you a quick favor. Now, I have already asked you in previous videos to like and subscribe to my channel. However, I've recently launched a membership options as well. Now, this is essentially a way that you can join the community that is my channel. And there's multiple steps, multiple tiers to the potential membership. The first is what I call the Share the Love package. Now this essentially is going to get you some loyalty badges. I'm getting some emojis drafted, and also the ability to have priority replies inside of a members Q&A area. I do my best to respond to everyone's questions, but now the channel's growing bigger by the day. I'm not necessarily going to always be able to reply to people, so there's going to be a members only Q&A area which will always get priority replies from myself. The second tier is the training courses. Now this includes everything from the Share the Love package, but also some exclusive premium training courses, starting off with a beginner's guide to SharePoint, but there's going to be a whole host of other members only training guides in here. There'll also be the ability to vote for new training courses. So I've got a bunch of ideas of exclusive training courses, but please feel free to vote within there to let me know what you would like. And also there's some bonus featured content. I might include some things like some outtakes, some funny things which kind of happen as I'm playing around with SharePoint as well. And the final package is the face-to-face. Now this includes the other packages, but there's also the option of joining a monthly drop-in where there'll be some other people, other members of the channel that want to ask me questions and we can work on things together. They'll be recorded as well. Now the questions will be submitted beforehand, which will give me time to review them, put together any examples or demonstrations, things like that. But it also means if you can't attend that month's drop-in, I can read out your question, I can answer it and give a demonstration, and it'll be recorded and you'll be able to get access to the members only recordings of those drop-in sessions as well. I'd really appreciate any form of membership to join and build out the community further. It really does help support me and creating this content in my own time as well. And I'd love to hear from you via the community posts that we're putting together, and we can work together to create more exclusive content, as well as enhancing the content that we have free to offer for the wider community. I hope you enjoyed that video. As always, like, subscribe, and use the comments feed below for any questions that you might have. And keep your eyes peeled for the next video. Thank you for your time.